Yeah, with this, I would like to call upon our next speaker, Ms. Suchitra Inaamdar. She's been practicing for 19 years as, as a psychotherapist in Malad West. She is currently a director and faculty at AAPARA India, and she runs the training in Anthroposophic psychotherapy. Her, her topic for today is study of suicide literacy in Mumbai. This research was recently done with help of Dr. Sanjay and Sanjay Ranade. Can I have everyone's attention, please? Yeah, thank you. So, so Ms. Suchitra Inaamdar has conducted this research along with Dr. Sanjay Ranade. Recently, he's done his PhD in communication and is teacher at Mumbai University. And together, this topic is something that is very enlightening for me, because the study of suicide literacy in Mumbai, and Mumbai being the fast city and being the absolute, hub of all work and cosmopolitan in a lot of ways. So this will help us to know and gain insight into a lot of aspect of how suicide is looked upon in our city. So please welcome with a round of applause for Ms. Suchitra Inaamdar. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. May I just make a very humble request? Is it possible for all the people who are sitting quite at the back of the room to come a little ahead? I mean, I don't know whether you need to come with all your belongings, but at least if I can have an eye contact with all of you, that'll be really great. Is it possible for people to move ahead? So, when I got an email and an invitation from Gayatri ji, and it was so nice that it came at a very opportune time, because as I was introduced as a psychotherapist, I run my clinic, and for 19 years I have been working as a psychotherapist. How many of you are therapists and psychologists working in clinical spaces? Okay. Isn't it a very lonely job? It is, yes. It's really a very lonely job, because you're working with a lot of people. You are understanding the human psyche to such a deep level. You're getting so many things which are there in other people's life actually into your own reality as well. At least it is limited to your consultation room, right? And we know so many facets of life which otherwise we wouldn't have experienced if we were probably doing something else. Yeah? So, but however interesting and great that may sound, because there are a lot of people, I'm sure many of you, when you tell others, I'm a psychologist, oh, that's how they would react, right? I mean, most of them don't know anything about what we are doing, but that is the way they would react. Because it's very intriguing to understand someone or to know someone who is looking at other people with so much of interest, right? And also doing intervention, also helping people to come out of whatever problems, whatever issues that they are coming up with, okay? But for us, it's a very lonely world in the workspace. You cannot tell someone about anything as far as your work is concerned, because all the people who are coming to talk to you are, you are the confidant, You are not going to chat up with them and talk about your own issues and also your successes and failures as far as your work life is concerned. So there is nobody to ring your ear. There is nobody to pat your back. Not a very nice feeling to have. Yeah. So these kind of forums are really lively and they are wonderful, and we should look forward to them. And I really jumped at this idea because There was a slight history towards it, and also because, of course, I wanted to get out of that clinic space of mine. So we have an organization here where we are working on anthroposophic psychology, which is a very new aspect coming into India. But just like every other therapy which came into India much later and is already established abroad, but this has a lot of, it has its roots in the Eastern way of thinking, Eastern way of thinking about the psyche, about human development, about what is actually intervention and what is also the inner work of the professional, whether he or she is a doctor, a psychologist, a teacher, any kind of professional who works with human beings, to know the actual root and the wisdom of the human life, and then come towards the process of diagnosing and intervening. This is the shortest way that I can put what we are doing here, though it is a philosophy which runs into more than 100 years now. So AAPARA is an Indian organization. We are a few certified anthroposophic psychotherapists. We are internationally certified. And we have started the organization for the dissemination of this way of thinking about our kind of work in psychology. So anthroposophy all by itself is not really speaking directly about psychology. Rudolf Steiner, who started the philosophy, had a lot to talk about education, about medicine, so many things, so many aspects of life, even including agriculture and architecture and so many other things, right? And there were professionals, very good psychiatrists, pediatricians, who actually took these aspects of anthroposophy. They brought them into special education. They brought them into caring for special needs, and also brought them into understanding the human psyche and human biography from the point of view of diagnosing and intervening. Yeah? Now, this is the background of our little small organization. What we do in it is mainly trainings in anthroposophic psychology and also research. So Dr. Sanjay Ranade, who has done the research along with me, is a person who is teaching in the Mumbai University, and he is closely associated with research, while the other 2-3 directors that we have, all of us are very hardcore therapists, loners at work, not in the public. So he has been the backbone of getting AAPARA into more of academic process. Yeah. Now, when this invitation or this opportunity came up, it came up on the background of a program that we were already running in AAPARA, which are mental health awareness programs. So all of us have done some mental health awareness programs throughout our career, isn't it? So basically the concept was the same, but we were thinking about how we are going to shift the social narrative. Does this term click somewhere? Yeah? Because how the society talks and articulates about certain aspects of human life has a very big impact on the acceptance, on concepts like stigma, right? So we were actually looking forward to, one second, I hope I'm doing this right. Okay, great. So the social narrative on mental health was a very important aspect of what AAPARA was doing as community work. So me and my colleague Lena Kasset, we were into doing these mental health awareness programs. And when we chalked out this program from the point of view of anthroposophy, what we felt was that in India, see, these are only ideas, all right? I don't have any research base to support what I'm saying, but it is coming more out of the experience of 19 years that I have with families and psychopathology and family problems and divorces and children and special children, and I mean the list can go on. So with all these put together, the kind of experiences that we have had as therapists, we put them down into a more wisdom-oriented idea. And that was this. So the goals of these mental health awareness programs that we were doing were helping people articulating mental health. Are we using the right terms? You know, simple things like, do we use the right word for the right emotion? So many of your clients would also come with, oh, how are you feeling? I'm feeling bad. Now, the bad really does not mean anything. You can feel good, you can feel bad, and even in bad, you can feel good, and even in good, you can feel bad, right? If I have an emotion of anger, it's not as if I'm only angry, right? Sometimes I'm feeling relieved that I am able to express my anger. Sometimes I'm feeling many other feelings associated with anger, yeah? Am I aware of them? Am I aware? Am I emotionally literate? Was a very important part of doing these awareness programs. So one is articulating mental health, being able to talk about problems in the correct terminology, or it's not academically correct terminology. It is just making things you are able to segregate it well. Yeah. The next was about handling stigma. So one goal of the mental health awareness programs was how are we going to teach someone to handle stigma in their own vocabulary, in their own connotations, yeah? Then enhancing our own quality of life, which needs to be something that we need to talk about, that wherever I am, nobody is in a perfect state. Each one of us is striving to become something better, right? So wherever I am right now, whatever is my 0 point at the moment, how do I move beyond that? How do I go beyond where I am? And can I give a parameter, or can I give something like a checklist for it, okay? And then there is also social contribution and coexistence, because the main important part of health is not just me thinking about my health, but me thinking about my health as embedded in a social milieu. Are we getting this image? Yeah, because I'm not away from my environment. I might be doing a lot of meditation, I might be taking care of myself, but if my family is not doing very well, if my colleagues are unhappy, if there is a lot of stress around, there is no way that I will be able to keep myself away from that unhealthy aspect of life, right? So how do I contribute as an individual, and how do I make the society contribute to me in my life? So the society also has to contribute in my life, and I have to contribute back to the society, right? So this was about the mental health awareness programs that we did. So the goals that I was talking about, how were we reaching them? There were 3 concepts. So mental health versus mental illness. So articulation is about both mental health and mental illness. So I generally start my awareness program with a very simple question. You know, I start with physical illness. I ask them, how many of you have any kind of physical illness right now? So some random people will raise their hand, and most of the people will keep their hand down. And then I ask them, so the rest of you, can you tell me for sure that you are physically healthy? No, that's a big no. So we all have very random physical symptoms. And there is a difference between being physically ill and being physically healthy. And many of us just stay somewhere between, you know. The same is the case with mental illness. Now, physical illness is easy to understand, so I start the program with that, but it's hardly 2 minutes. And after that, I just move on to the mental illness part, and the articulation starts there. That am I able to actually talk about how do I feel, how do I behave, and how do I think about the world around me, about myself, and about what I want to become, yeah? So here, knowledge that can help intervention and reduce stigma is a part of the articulation process, and also the mental health versus mental illness concept, okay? Now the second one, if you remember, it is about what are the processes that I can get involved in to improve my own quality of life. So we just came up with this very sloganish thing. This is also not research or anything, but I think most of us, at least lay people just hit very quickly with this idea that yes, that establishing peace in human communication, in human interaction, is the foremost. It comes first. After peace, you will automatically come to happiness. And it's only after happiness that you are going to experience and experience love, and also being able to express it. Now, whether it is a parent-child relationship, whether it is colleagues, whether it is spouses, whether it's lovers, whether it is, mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, whether it is even your helpers at home and you, the expression of this is going to happen only in this form. If I expect that there will be a lot of love in my relationship, but every now and then there are fireworks, it is not going to sustain for a long time, because the foundation of love and happiness is peace. If there is peace, it's only then that these two will live. Yeah? So this is something which was very natural, and this leads to a thinking about effectiveness of possibilities towards life. That there are many possibilities. I don't have to stick to just my ways of thinking, my ways of understanding, my ways of perceiving things, but I can actually explore possibilities with the help of other people, also sometimes with the help of professionals. Then a consciousness rising to a level where you understand that society contributes to individuals' mental health, and the individual contributes to the society consciously. Now, with all this, in the mental health awareness program, what were we actually reaching out to? We were reaching out to the last thing on the board, which is willingness and motivation to engage in life and living. I want to live, and I want to engage in every aspect of life. Now, from here, we obviously come to the concept of suicide. Yeah? Now, in the prevention and intervention of suicide, when we were thinking about it, because that was also an integral part of the mental health awareness programs, what we were thinking about is, when we talk about both these aspects, there's a lot of professional work involved. We are also going to listen, we are going to teach other people how to listen to somebody who is having these kind of ideations, and what exactly to read when somebody is talking about whether something is an ideation or it's not an ideation is also sometimes a vague and ambiguous concept. Yeah? And all researches in that we have referred to, that we have been reading, the kind of work of other people that we have been reading, everything does point to the suicide prevention or intervention aspect being very ambiguous. We are always wondering whether we are hitting it right, we are not hitting it right. What is it that we are looking at? What is it that we need not look at? Okay? So there were two aspects. One was on the background of available knowledge, whatever knowledge is available, emotional, social, economic precedents to suicide. I won't call them causes, because they are always not necessarily causes. One research that I came up to was about the number of people who go through ideation, suicide ideations at some or the other point of time in their life, and who have not actually put it into action, okay? And then, after growing up, they have realized that if somebody asks you a question, yeah, did you ever have a suicide ideation? Many of us may say yes. Some of us may not even remember what was it revolving around, okay? Some of us may remember, but now we know that we have a much better perspective of it. Why? Because each one of us who actually had an ideation at some point of time gave life a chance. And when you grow up with age, many more perspectives to life are automatically added. Yeah? So there is a travel between ideation and attempt, or ideation and committing suicide. And we all as professionals need to intercept there, where some ideation is there, but there is also fear of death. So the person may not necessarily go ahead and attempt or commit suicide, but that person is giving us an idea that I don't see any other resolution other than death to what is happening to me right now. All right? So on the background of all the information that is available, do MHPs, which is mental health professionals, do mental health professionals understand something more than the lay people, okay, about loss of willingness to live? This was always a question. Do we really understand something more about what is exactly the loss of willingness to live? And do mental health professionals have enough knowledge about when is an individual at risk versus who is at risk? The timing of the actual risk factor and who is the person who is actually at risk. Yeah? The second part, is there a contribution we can make towards understanding suicide prevention and intervention in the context of India? Is there something specific to be known about the Indian context? We have a very, like most of the knowledge comes from Euro-American style of researching and understanding concepts and understanding constructs as well. Is it possible for us to build something which is very typically Indian, which comes very close to our culture, which comes close to our psyche, the way we think, the way also transgenerational concepts enter our mindsets without we consciously working on them? I will come to this transgenerational aspect later in a different slide. So these were the questions that we actually wanted to answer. Now, for this assessment also, 2 questions need to be answered. The first involves warning signs. Is an individual experiencing a situation that is beyond his coping skills? And how do I understand that there is actually a situation beyond the coping skills? What am I basing my understanding on? What do I know about how the Indian economic system is right now? What is the Indian history which is having a which has an endowment, okay? This person who is sitting in front of me is a product of what? I need to understand that as a therapist, as a researcher, as a psychologist, for me to actually have the confidence to intervene over here. We also realize throughout our work in mental health awareness and also suicide prevention that we all know this actually, that in India, the youth is the highest in the whole world. The number of young people that we have in India is the highest number as compared to the whole world. But a very important aspect of this 2017 research is that though India has the world's largest number of young people, that actual demographic dividend we are not able to really take. Why? Because of this concept of NEET, which is very, very enlightening, that it showed that 30% of India's youth are NEETs. That means that not in employment, not in education, and not in training. So they are not having an education, they are not having any employment, and they are not even having training towards building of skills. Yeah. So when we have this kind of a data in front of us, is it really difficult to understand what would happen to all these people once they are crossing their youth and they are getting into middle age and they are getting older, right? So this was again the aspect which was very important to the Indian system. So what was our study? What we decided was that we will carry the social narrative aspect of the mental health programs towards here. Because if we want to deal with suicide, people have to be able to talk about it. And the same aspects of articulation about quality of life, of understanding that life will provide perspectives at different times, right? All this needs to happen in the Indian, with the Indian connotation in mind. And the social narrative leading towards lesser stigma, ease in talking, ease in approaching a professional, needs to improve. But if we want to improve something, we always start from where we are now, right? Unless and until I have an assessment of where am I now, I am not going to understand what I need to improve towards, yeah? So this exploratory study was about understanding what do common people and professionals alike, okay? What do they actually think about suicide? What do they think about suicide? What do they feel about suicide? So what we did was a very typical quantitative approach on with an online survey, okay? The survey was self-report. They were supposed to self-report their thoughts. We had 260 respondents. Our age group, we had put the age group as 15 to 40. The people who came forward to answer this questionnaire, this online questionnaire, 80% of them, if you can see here, were from the age group of 15 to 30. So this is a very young crowd, yeah? And 7% of the sample consisted of mental health professionals, which is a decent number, because if you look at professionals as in proportion to the number of people, number of lay people around, this percentage is really good, okay? Now what was the hypothesis? The hypothesis was actually fourfold. We were only trying to see correlates. What kind of responses correlate with what kind of category? So we were looking for age belonging to a social category such as reserved or open, exposure to the subject of psychology, which is why we also got a 7% mental health professionals participating in it, and the economic class. Would they play a significant role in determining what responses to the various statements would be? Why we were doing this? If you remember the previous slide where I spoke about, if intervention and prevention has, I need to know whether I know something very different from what already lay people know. As a mental health professional, is it that whatever I know is something significantly different from what they know, right? So this was a very simple t-test that we ran to understand the correlates. Now, what was the survey about? There were 4 sections. First section involved a series of statements involving possibilities towards suicide, as in people who attempt or commit suicide or the act itself are like. So what is a person who attempts suicide or commits suicide is like? So we are not looking at what they are actually like. We are looking at what the people think they are like. So I, as a person, I know of XYZ who has attempted suicide or committed suicide, and what do I think that the person is like, yeah? So this is, the entire study is about perceptions. It is not about what is actually there, yeah? Second, the second section dealt with what was the primary support system required to prevent these suicides. Third is, dealt with the what was perceived by the respondents as a response when faced with an assessment that an individual may be suicidal. And the fourth was, the last section looked at who the respondents thought as more likely to be suicidal. Okay? Now in the correlates, these are the correlates that we found. The suicides are misunderstood. They are social problems and economic problems correlated significantly with the age of the respondent, that they are economic problems and also medical problems correlated with economic status of the respondents. Teachers as a support system for suicides correlated significantly with age. I mean, you all can figure out why, right? Parents as a support system correlated significantly with age, social class, and exposure to psychology of the respondents. Women as more likely to be suicidal correlated significantly with the economic status of the respondents. Parents, spouses, and support groups were seen as significant support systems for the suicide prevention. Out of all the support systems that we had spoken about, these are the support systems which had the maximum, most of the respondents gave this as the answer, that parents, spouses, and support groups. Obviously, support groups, which have a professional conducting the support groups, were seen as a significant support system for suicide prevention. Finding that suicides are escapist tendencies, defeated attitudes, not inevitable, irrational, are economic problems, family problems, and emotional problems, point towards a correlation with need. They point in the sense this could be our further research. This is not the research that we have done right now, but this will be a very interesting research to do, which we will in AAPARA like to do. You remember the need not in employment, education, and training, right? So if so, 30% of our youth is coming into that category where they are not in employment, not in education, and not in training, then this will be a very interesting research, very typical to India, that we will like to conduct. Exposure to psychology, interestingly, has not shown any exclusive significance with any of the variables. That means people who, the lay persons and the professionals, their responses were not significantly different from each other. What do they feel and what do they think about suicide were not significantly different. So the future suggestions. Because of the social, economic, and family blending together, what we felt was family conversations, typically to India, family communications revolving around economic literacy. And economic literacy does not mean how much money I have in the bank and how much money you have in the bank and how many investments we have done. No, it's about the usage of resources and also understanding the quality of resources, which is very primary to economics. Yeah? This kind of a dialogue, we hypothesize, is probably not happening in the Indian setting and in the family environment. An openness towards talking about economics and economic literacy, and doing that in such a way that it achieves social relevance. So the way my parents were working with resources and the way they were investing or saving, you know, most of our parents, everybody has saved a lot of money. Do we believe in savings? No, we don't. We believe in investments, okay? Tomorrow, there will be a time where our young people are going to come up with the idea, maybe, that you don't actually need to buy homes. I don't want to buy a home. I don't need to do that, right? It is just economic liability to buy a house, yeah? We have to understand these concepts from one generation to another, and they have a lot of hold on how somebody is seeing, somebody is experiencing coping styles. How do I cope with my life? So tomorrow, if my son comes and tells me that I don't want a house for myself, I will always live in rented flats, I am going to, I'm telling you, I guarantee this, that I'm going to tell him that you're nuts. It doesn't work. And I'm sure he is also going to say the same thing about me. Are you getting it? Because it is not my reality. I don't understand life that way. And he understands life in a very different way. But economic aspects, and if they are not spoken about in families, can have a very, very strong effect on limiting one's coping styles and limiting freedom, okay, of experiencing life. And which also, of course, came in the survey as well, which is why we have put it over here, that family communications revolving around economic literacy. This means understanding, creating, and using resources. It does not mean money. Achieving social relevance might be significant for intervention. Now, there is another aspect. If you remember this word transgenerational, which I used in my talk today, that we are, of course, the styles of doing research, working with research concepts, And working scientifically with research concepts, they are great in the Euro-American styles. Yeah, that is wonderful. We are very good quality copycats. Indians are very good at imitating. No, they are seriously very good. I mean, it's a good trait to have as well, because people who imitate learn faster. You know, just like a child who is 5-year-old learns faster than how the speed with which you learn, correct? Because that child is not thinking, the child is imitating. But unfortunately, we are not 5-year-olds. So we all need to take what we require to take from the West. But we need to understand how it relates and how it has relevance to our own history, to our own ways of working, to our own cultural milieu. Now, over here, when we were doing a lot of literature review, this is also another aspect of research that we will like to get into, to understand what suicide or death or choosing death means for the Indian psyche. There are 2-3 concepts which came up. Though all religions in the world are against suicide, this is again a Western research that I am quoting, but it was done on a population with people of many religions. Okay, I will talk a little more about this particular one, though I have written very less about it. The Hindu religion is tolerant towards a person who commits suicide, also because of the strong belief that there is life after death. So there is always a relative thing. So somebody is elder than me, somebody is younger than me, and I'm relating myself to both this. So I'm always a part of a continuum. I'm not that one individual who is static. I'm always a part of a continuum. This is more about a philosophical orientation. Okay. Now about this research, this particular research which I have quoted over here, it spoke about the incidence of suicide attempts and successfully committed suicide amongst 4 or 5 religions. Okay. In that, the maximum number of suicides were in the Hindu religion. One thing that the researchers found was that the feeling of guilt about taking my own life was very low. There was no guilt about the aspect of taking my own life. Okay, so, but the difference, of course, the difference in numbers was not found to be significant with other religions, but it was still more. And this is the reason that they found in the background, that the society also they are obviously against the act of committing suicide. It is not as if people are endorsing it, but they are more tolerant towards it. You know, that the person who commits suicide is looked at with empathy. Are you getting the concept? Yeah. They are not looked at with condemn. So this was one very interesting aspect of this particular research. Then there were other researchers, not connected to just to Hindu religion, but to every other religion in the world, and also to the idea of patriotism. So dying as a part of martyrdom, as giving your life for a cause, was considered to be a very great of great value. Now please understand here that none of us who have been doing the research, or even these researchers, are endorsing or subscribing to these ideas. The concept brought in over here is that whether the society feels that this is martyrdom or not, if I believe that something is martyrdom, now are you getting to what I'm coming at? Yeah. If I feel that I am dying for a good cause, or I'm dying for a very romantic idea of some glorious death, then my ease of getting into that act. Now get back again to the first slide where we were talking about ideation to attempt. So there is an ideation. Now when we talk about suicide ideation, generally we are talking about being unwilling to live. We are not talking about willing to die. Both these things are two different things. I escape from life and I embrace death are two different concepts which we need to understand. And sometimes they are lying at the bottom line level of the psyche. And we may not be able to get it out unless we know that this can also happen. Yeah? Then, as you all know, in our history, peculiar to India, we have had a history of embracing death, like in case of Samadhi by saints. You have all heard about Johars by the Rajput women. You have all heard about the concept of sati. Yeah? All these were individual or mass suicides, in a way. So while I am working with somebody, when I'm working with a person, do I understand what this means, and do I understand it also in many colors and in many shades that it comes with? I have had this experience personally of people who have argued with me. I mean, I'm talking about clients who have had a suicidal ideation, and they have argued with me that how it will be a very glorious death. And I'm sure many of you must have experienced this at least once or twice in your entire practice, where people have come with these kind of ideas. What do we call them? We call them delusions. They are delusions. Because one saint called Jnaneshwar had his samadhi done and he embraced death very easily. So, I mean, am I trying to say that I am Jnaneshwar? Obviously, I'm not. I mean, all of you know that, right? So, then what is it? What is it that is actually working on my mind? What aspect of that is working on my mind? This is the transgenerational aspects which run in our entire lineage, which separate us from other people, which make so many fabrics of life and fabrics of society. This is where actually we will want this research finally to go. And this was a very interesting and intriguing aspect of understanding the quality of the concept of suicide. All right, I think I'm done. Thank you. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Ms. Suchitra. A wonderful insight into our history, the diverse cultural outlook on suicide, and a very good concept of moving our important role from the ideation to moving on to the actual attempt and what role we can play. So very wonderfully presented. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am may not be able to stay with us till the end, so I would request if anybody has any questions for her, please feel free to ask her right now. We can spend a little bit time on that. Yeah.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Yeah, what do you want me to do? You want me to take it to the first slide? Yeah, so this is anthroposophic psychology.
Yeah, so can you please explain in brief what that is?
That would be a really long explanation. I don't mind explaining, of course I love to. I can talk for days on it. But I can talk to you during lunch probably, because that's too broad. Unless you can make it very, the question short. Yeah, specific. Anything specific that you would like to know? No, okay. which is what I spoke about in the introduction of my presentation also, that anthroposophy is all about understanding human wisdom. Actually, more than human wisdom, it is about with what wisdom the human being is crafted, if I may use that word. Yeah. So just like you know, you would understand the phenomena of the natural world around you. You will study plants, you will study animals. Can I understand the human psyche and the human mind with that objectivity? Okay. Yes, it will be, yes, anthropological background, yes, yes, definitely. 260, yeah.
And can you please explain about this resources, economic literacy? I did not get it properly.
Yeah, when we did this, study, uh, the maximum number of respondents, okay, when they were talking about the factors that precede the ideation of suicide or even the attempt of suicide. The major factors that came up were the social factors, the family aspects, and economic aspects, where the economic aspects were the highest actually. So when you come to an understanding of how do I bring these three together, when we see them as separate things, they are obviously separate. But can I bring them together while intervening, and can I get an insight into what exactly are these economic problems? So sometimes economic problems are about not really understanding as to economically where you want your life to go. When we choose careers, when we choose to live with a family or to break up, or, I mean, is that talk between all of us lucid? Is it devoid of unnecessary emotions? Sometimes, you know, simple things like, I have really had clients who are holding very high positions in different places, you know, their offices, and really, really highly placed. And then they would say something like, you know, I'm so depressed, and and then anxiety and depression, and finally what comes up with, you will not even believe this, that the person's ATM card and credit cards and everything is in the husband's hands, to the extent that she does not even know the PIN of her credit cards and ATM cards, never went to the ATM card to remove cash. And these, I have had many such experiences, and very interestingly, in all these people, this is just one example that I'm giving you, you know, or being able to talk about things like property, things like earnings, things like expenditure, who handles income, who handles expenditure, who handles this whole accounting business of the family, okay? This is not research supported, this is practice supported, okay? So in the research what we found, I'm supporting it with what I experience in my practice, is that many a times it does happen that people don't know how to talk to each other. Okay, talking about economics, they assume that this is breach of trust. They don't understand that talking about economics is actually creating trust. Because the more transparency you create, the more trustworthy the person feels. Yeah, making this shift, even in therapy, has done a great job as far as intervention of anxiety problems and depression is concerned. I mean, more than other things, something like this really clicks and it works very well. So this is what I meant by understanding economics and understanding what are the psychological responses towards it, which are very typical to our upbringing and our society. They are not so typical to maybe some other society. Yeah? Any other question? So I guess we are good. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Gayatri ji. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Suchitra, once again. Yeah, I truly believe and I agree with her that our society is more obedient society than a compliant society. And yes, a lot of concerns do crop up from there.